And so glad to be here. Our focus for today, I've called today's class, Let Your Light Shine. Shall we do that together? I think it's a nice theme. Especially as we come into the little inklings of spring that are happening in Colorado. We can start to feel some of the expansion that's happening. We have crocuses popping up in our yard and these little irises, and it's so pretty. It's pretty. And we have already our first bird nesting on our back porch. Our back porch is like a haven for a lot of birds. Last year, we had several rounds of dove babies born and several rounds of finch babies born. This year, we so happened to have a flicker who moved in, which we're a little mixed about because but we built him a house and he moved in, or she moved in. So we have a flicker in our back porch at the moment. And she's very pretty. So we're mixed only because they're in the woodpecker family and they can poke holes in things. So feels like a random share here at the beginning. But on a few things that now that we're in recording mode, just in terms of props for today, it is helpful to have bolster, strap, a pillow for a knee down moment, maybe even a blanket, and 2 blocks. You don't need all of them. They're options for comfort, and I'm really all about comfort. So we're going to create ease and comfort. If there's anything that I'm ever suggesting that your body's like, no, not for me, I want to do something different, do you. Really honor what serves your body all throughout the practice. That is the most important thing for me. On a physical level, I have geared this class to focus on releasing the psoas muscles and hip flexors in general, in part because I did a lot of sitting in the last few weeks and my body felt that. So it's good to come out of those contracted positions. Our bodies are not meant to sit for long periods of time. And also our psoas and our hip flexors are fight-flight muscles, right? We tend to contract in these muscles in response to stress or any perception of threat, or if we have a history of trauma. And so, you know, there's wisdom in that. We draw the knees in because it protects our vulnerable organs, and we also draw in order to press out, whether that's to flee or that's to fight. And so as we focus on creating some release here, we're simultaneously going to do a lot of orienting to cues of safety. As we sense that inner sense of safety, connection, perhaps a quality of freedom, our bodies will naturally be more apt to relax, to let go of some of that defensive holding. So the invitation is that as we soften this vigilance, it allows your light to shine. Hey. I'll speak just briefly about just a little anatomy note before we go in, that the diaphragm in the body is our breathing apparatus, right? And it's meant to, on the inhale, lower and expand. On the exhale, it lifts up. And on that inhalation, when we expand and do that belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, our diaphragm kind of tugs on the connective tissue. Diaphragm is primarily connective tissue, and it tugs on the connective tissue around the heart, and it creates a little bit more volume around the heart, and it creates more space for our lungs as we increase that cavity for opening up through the breath. And our diaphragm is also really deeply connected, connective tissue-wise, into the psoas muscles. So as we're working on releasing, we're going to go into what I'll describe as these kind of exalted shapes of these opportunities to really open and stretch across the diaphragm, across the chest, across the psoas. And you get to modulate this, right? You can choose how much opening is right for your body at any given moment. I invite you to really connect inward in this practice, to know that there is room for all of you, all of whatever's happening inside of you in your internal world or in response to our external world, all welcome here, right? Emotions, even the fears, right? When we welcome those contracted places into the folds of our awareness, we create more safety. I will share a few quotes, and then we're gonna get onto our mats. First is really just a gentle reminder, and I speak about this a lot in pretty much all of my writings, but especially my books focused on the connection of yoga for trauma, that yogic philosophy is reminding us that we are already whole. We learn to see past illusions, and we practice removing the obstacles that prevent us from knowing that wholeness, knowing our innate true nature. And the practice of yoga allows us to discover within us the place that is untouched by trauma, the place that is really protected deep inside. And so that's the space that we're aiming to make contact with mentally, emotionally, physically, so forth. And the next quote is from Patanjali. And it's actually, I had a funny little moment this week of like, what translation? Who brought this quote of Patanjali forth? And it's from a book by Wayne Dyer. And so you can find the original version of, at least attributed to Patanjali, from Wayne Dyer. And it says, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces and faculties and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. I'll accompany this with another quote by Viktor Frankl, who said that we become more human when we focus on serving a purpose that's greater than ourselves. We become more human when we focus on serving a purpose that's greater than ourselves. I know that this is a huge part of what drives me in the world and inspires me to be who I am and do what I do. And I also know the ripple effect that happens when we inspire each other. Right? And it's profound and beautiful to notice how we get to watch so much goodness occur. And we need to look for that in our world, because there's a lot that we can see otherwise, right? We can see Florida, we could see a lot that's happening in our world that's kind of a counter to that sense of trust and goodness. So we can hone in on, where do we feel called forth by something that really serves our values and serves each other. Okay. Final quote is one that many of you will be familiar with. I don't think I've ever read it in one of our Zoom classes together, and I felt really called to share this one today. And this is the one that is originally by Marianne Williamson, and Nelson Mandela read it at one of his speeches as well. And I will share it with you. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. We are all meant to shine as children do, We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just some of us, it is everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So here we are, and today's practice focus, let your light shine. I'm going to transition onto my mat. I invite you, if you are not there, to do the same. And for today, the invitation is to start in a variation of child's pose with your arms wrapped back behind you in what we'll call embryo. And as I mentioned, it can be handy to have some props today. And even in this beginning shape, something like this, you might choose to place a bolster underneath your chest to support you. And then perhaps wrapping your hands back behind. And whichever version you're choosing, taking a moment to arrive. You might also place that bolster between your hips and your heels if that creates more accessibility and comfort in this shape. And then the invitation is to connect to your breath. And perhaps here, beginning to notice where you can soften just a little bit more. So that perhaps the only effort here is allowing the inhales to expand through your diaphragm. Maybe noticing in this shape how you might sense that in your rib cage or even in the back of your body. But that the exhale, you get to simply release, and with that, any unnecessary holding in your jaw, in your face, in your hips or shoulders. And then from this place of connecting within, perhaps allowing yourself to set an intention for what you would like out of this time we have together. What is your why? And taking a few moments to arrive at an intention that will support you today. And the shape that we've started in, sometimes referred to as bija or seed pose. So perhaps imagining that you're planting the seed. And trusting that that seed of your intention can be held and supported. There's nothing you need to do at this point. Just coming back to breath. And then if it feels right, maybe reaching your hands forward. A little stretch. You can kind of paw your hands down on the mat, reaching one side and then the other. And you might explore how it feels to walk your hands off the mat to one side and pause there. I'm walking to the right, and it doesn't matter which side you've chosen. We're going to let the opposite hip reach down and away. You might even press into your hand, facilitating just a little bit of a reach or twist, lengthening. And back to breath. And back to center. And switching sides. Hmm. And again, back through center. And this time with an invitation to walk your hands up towards your knees, coming up into a seated shape for a moment. And if it's uncomfortable in any way to be sitting on your heels, you can switch that out either cross-legged or on a bolster. And once again, as you connect to your breath, a few very conscious diaphragmatic breaths here, expanding across that area of connective tissue that links up between the ribs and your psoas, your lungs and heart. Inhale and exhale, let that go. And again, inhale here. And soften to release. And one more time. And release. And maybe for just a few breaths here, letting your spine move with the breath. So inhale and finding a bit of that expansive shape across your front body. And exhale, will follow the contraction of the breath with the shape of your body. And again, and it's your choice if you want your arms to be part of the movement. And then back to center once again. And from here, an invitation to lean forward enough to tuck your toes under, and then to come back so that you are seated on your heels. And we'll call this toes pose. And your body may say, yay, I love this. Or you might say, not so much. In which case, as you lean forward, it'll take some of the pressure off of the fascia of your feet. And we're coming in here just enough to greet the connective tissue of the soles of your feet. And you might even add on by turning your fingers back towards your knees and then just roll a little bit back so that you're also accessing a little bit of that connective tissue in your wrists. And then maybe once again, stacking up right over your heels. Noticing how your breath responds. And then we'll lean forward to untuck your toes. And this time again, sitting back on your heels with an invitation to lift one knee, the other, maybe even rock onto the tops of both feet for a moment. And you can, of course, stay with one side or the other, or tiny, tiny little movements here, opening through the connective tissue of the fronts of your ankles. And again, not here too long. Unwinding, we're going to take feet forward and hips back. So now with your feet in front of you, an invitation to come lying down onto your back. And here is where having that bolster or a block nearby will come in handy in just a moment. So arriving down onto your back, and before we use that block or bolster, an invitation to sense your body in relationship to gravity again. Sense your breath. Maybe resting your hands on your belly and sensing a little bit of movement there with your breath. And if it feels right, walking your hands out towards the edges of your mat, or depending on your body, maybe a little bit closer. And then invitation to drop both knees to one side. And you might find a gentle morning stretch, or for some of you, it's early evening, finding your little stretch here, and we'll come through center and find that on side two. So you'll begin to perhaps sense and feel your psoas, hip flexors in this shape. And in your pacing, one more time, or maybe two times, side to side. Beautiful. And then returning to center if you're not there already. And from center, walking your feet about hips widths apart, and then pressing into your feet just enough to slide the bolster underneath your sacrum. And it's not under the whole of your low back, just the sacrum itself. And again, a block can be there if you have that and don't have a bolster. And taking a moment in this shape to just sense and feel how your body responds with a different relationship to gravity. And then maybe drawing your right knee in. And if you draw your right knee in, you might clasp around your shin, or if it's more comfortable for you, clasping around the back of your hamstring here. And you can stay just as you are, or you might begin to reach your left leg long. And in doing so, you might sense that we've contracted the psoas muscle on the right side, and we are extending on the left. And just finding your breath, softening and allowing yourself to arrive. And if it's too much to fully extend your left leg, you can keep a gentle bend there, really honoring that we don't need to go for the biggest range of motion. Really honoring that you can find the edge and back off just a little bit and notice how your nervous system responds. And then an invitation to release the right leg and rebend the left. Reset your bolster if you need to. And we'll find this on side two. Drawing left knee in, clasping wherever it's right for you. And you can stay right here. Or maybe you begin to extend your right leg out. And noticing how this side might have a different story to tell. Might need a slightly different variation. Maybe you need A little bit more reach through your right foot to find the edge, or maybe you need a little more bend in your right knee. And then slowly rebending right knee and sitting left foot down onto the earth and pressing into both feet to remove the bolster and settle your hips all the way back down. You might take a moment here even just to rock your pelvis a little bit, lifting your tailbone and curling it down. And you'll notice how your low back presses into the earth and then arches away. And resetting your spine. And then the next few movements are to strengthen through your abdominal muscles, which will be really lovely stabilization for your pelvis and also for our standing shapes. So we're going to come into a very similar shape to where we just were, drawing right knee in, clasping around your right shin. And this time, rather than using the hands to just passively draw the knee in, I'm going to invite you to press your knee, your shin, excuse me, into your hands and resist with your hands. So you'll feel this very likely light up through the back of your right leg or your glute. You can stay here, or you might slide your left leg long. You can keep your heel on the ground, or you might lift the heel off of the ground. And you can keep your shoulders and head on the earth, or you might lift and curl. And finding this static hold, once again, pressing shin into hands, resisting with your hands, using your abdominals to lift through your upper body, maybe hovering your left foot, connecting to breath. And then let that go partially. We're going to replant left foot and we're going to lengthen right leg. Now you can keep a knee bend here as well, and you can take a hold behind your right hamstring. Once again, you might lift up here and you might extend through your left foot, this time pressing hamstring into hands, resisting. And then similar action, but let your abdominals really take over. We're going to let go of that press of the hamstring and we're going to let go of the hands. And then in some variation, again, knee can be totally bent or, moving more towards straight, finding this hover, coming back to breath. And then replanting left foot, hands behind your head. And then from here, scissoring your legs just a few times. You can let your head be heavy. You can gaze up towards the ceiling, elbows wide. Good. And then ending with right leg up, bending left foot once again, planting that on the mat, and right foot up and over the top of your left thigh. This time, just finding the obliques, sending left elbow towards your right knee. Inhale to open, exhale across. Finding your pace with the movement. Last one like this. Back through center. I know this is a little pretzel-y for the lower body, but we're going to find one more variation on this side. This time, right leg is crossed completely over your left thigh. So we're in like a eagle legs. And then once again, lifting through upper body and lowering. Exhale to lift. Inhale to lower. And again. One more like this. And then keeping the legs as they are, lowering down through your upper body and a static hold. Palm over your right thigh, just above the knee, and press with your hands, resist with your legs. You're going to press legs into hands. Feel this in the low belly, maybe a little shake, and then let it go. Maybe even drop into a little bit of a supine Gomukhasana stretch for your hips, where you're reaching down for opposite ankles. And you might explore how it feels to flex your feet or point your feet or even rotate your feet. Few breaths here. And then we'll let that go. And any movement you might need between sides, you might go back to that little supine cat stretch, dropping your knees from side to side, just integrating what we've done so far. And we'll find all of that on side 2. Now preparing here, this time left knee comes in, clasping around your left shin. You can keep right leg bent just as you are. This time we are pressing shin into hands, resisting with the hands, maybe sliding your right foot out, maybe hovering your right heel. Again, feel that static hold in the left side, what it lights up in the back of your left leg. Maybe you lift through your upper body and you curl in. Coming back to breath. And then lowering for a moment, planting right foot, and then sending your left foot upward. And you can have a nice deep knee bend, or you can lengthen a little more. This time we're pressing back of hamstring into hands, resisting with hands. You might lift up, you might extend right leg. You're getting the hang of this now, and you can choose how much bend in your left leg. Now we're keeping the same shape, but we're going to release that active press with hands, leg, and really let your abdominals take over as perhaps you release your hands and find one more static hold here. And then planting right foot, hands behind the head, a little different on this side. We're going to scissor the legs and go from side to side in your upper body. So right elbow towards left knee and left elbow towards right knee. And just a few here, side to side, supine bicycle, and you can modify this by bending your knees. Good. And then next time, left leg is up, lifting back through center, planting right foot, left ankle over the right thigh, and just to the left we go. Inhale, center, exhale, left. Beautiful. One more here. And then coming through center, lifting the legs up. We're going to cross left thigh over right, little eagle legs here in your lower body, and then lifting this straight up and down. Exhale as you lift and inhale to lower. And our last little press here, lowering down, hand over your left thigh, and pressing legs into hands, resisting with your hands. Feel that static hold, stretch, maybe a little shake in the belly. Continue to breathe. And then let it go. Knees come in, maybe reaching around for opposite ankle. And just sensing what's happening in your body now. So we learn from things like progressive muscle relaxation is that sometimes we need to activate chronically tense muscles in the body before they're willing to let go. It's like our mind catches hold of the tension and says, I'm onto you. I know you're there, and now we can release it. So that's a little bit of the intentions here. Okay, we're going to uncross the legs, and the invitation is to take a rock and roll on your spine. Eventually, rocking up and over your shins into a tabletop. And a lovely moment here to just find your own little bit of a free flow here. How does your body want to integrate what we've done thus far? And that might include taking a sip of water. Beautiful. Okay. So from here, from our tabletop, I'm going to guide through some rather specific motions. And if you need more of a free flow today, honor that. If you're going for the ride with me, the invitation is to take a moment and to find your cat pose, really arch your spine. And then find your cow pose. So now we are lifting the tailbone a little bit, at least lifting towards the sits bones and the shoulders. You can keep your neck a little neutral here, but you're going to feel that there's more of that curve in your lower back. And you might have the tops of your feet on the ground, but I'm going to invite you for this one to curl your toes under and to see what it feels like to really keep that curve in your spine, that natural lumbar curve, as you lift your knees off the floor and as you press back to a downward facing dog. So sometimes we go into downward dog and we go into more of an arched spine. And what I'm wanting for this transition is really feel the curve and see if you can keep it with you, which might mean that you have a very deep bend in your knees. And then from there, maybe you begin to reach your heels down, but you're still seeing if you can keep some of that essence of the lumbar curve in your downward dog. You might let your head go, pressing into hands. Maybe just that gentle working through the backs of the legs. And when you feel ready, knees can come back to the earth. And then finding that arch of your spine. And then back through to cow. So we're coming back into the lumbar curve. From here, an invitation to take your left leg up towards the ceiling and keeping your left knee bent and your left foot flexed, like you were balancing a little yoga block on your left foot, and then just sending that yoga block right up to the ceiling. So we're doing a few little pulses here and intentionally activating through your left glute. And then coming into a static hold, again, still keeping that lumbar curve. We're going to keep that as we draw left knee under. So I'm not rounding my spine, or at least I'm intending to not. It's a tricky one. Back up with the left foot, and then under your body, keeping the lumbar curve. It's going to limit the range of motion. And one more like that. Good. Little therapeutics for the low back here. All right, this time we're going to send your left leg back and just a few heel rocks. So not uncommon when we feel stressed that our calf muscles tighten a bit, our ankles can get a little tight as well. So we're just loosening that up. And then from here, invitation to take your right shin back behind you and let that begin to bring you up into a gate pose. And from here, maybe a side lean toward your left leg. Let it feel good. Beautiful. And then up and over. Right hand can plant. And a moment here just to reach. Nice long modified side plank. Feeling your whole left side body. And the more that you lean your heart back, maybe the more you press into your left foot, you might begin to feel that stretch across your left hip flexor. And you can choose how much of that you want. You can curl in and reduce that and expand out to amplify it. This is a beautiful place to stay. Some of you might want to join me in lifting your left leg. And if you're coming into that balance, you might inhale here and exhale, knee and elbow together. And inhale, expand. And exhale, contract. One more time, inhale. Exhale, contract. And this time, maybe opening it up just a little further. And you might even reach back around to take hold of your left foot, not a requirement. And you can even just in the intention of going in that direction, feel the opening across your front body and hip flexor. Not here too long, releasing. And we meet back in the tabletop. In a moment, just to free flow and wiggle that out. You might notice left and right sides of your body, your hips, your pelvis. And then from here, if it feels good to you, invitation to take your right foot up, your right ankle, or right knee, sorry. And again, 90-degree bend and flexing your right foot and stabilizing here in the pelvis as you begin to press that right sole of the foot up towards the ceiling. You could leave a little footprint up there. Lovely. And then keeping the lumbar curve in your spine, drawing right knee under. Once again, that range of motion is much reduced. Sending right foot back and up and under. Letting your leg lift. And then again under. One more like that. And then this time, sending your right leg back and a little heel rock. This time, it's the left leg that sends back behind you. And you can take your right hand, maybe even circle around your right wrist, finding gate pose. And then leaning towards the right leg. Coming up through center, this time planting left hand and sending right arm long. You might explore how it feels to ground into the outer edge of your right foot as you reach your right fingertips. And you can choose a little bit more of a curling forward versus an opening up, and how that changes the feeling in your body. We're finding the edge and no need to go past it. In fact, backing away from the edge of sensation is often beneficial. Then you can stay right there, or maybe you lift the right foot off of the earth and you might stay here, or draw elbow and knee and inhale and exhale, contract. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Last one, contracting here. Inhale, expand, and maybe reach in the direction of or clasping hold and finding a half bow. Not here too long, one more breath. And then release and letting it go and moving back into a table. and wiggle it out, finding your flow that integrates. So just like we did before, our next transition will take us into downward dog. And once again, you might take a moment to find that cat pose, round your spine, and then into cow with your toes curled under, keeping the lumbar curve as you lift your knees. And then begin to press back, maybe nice deep bend in your knees. And then see if you can keep that length of your spine as you lengthen through the backs of your legs, and they don't have to come to straight. And then from here, invitation is to walk forward and take your feet for a walk towards the front of your mat. And I'll invite you to keep them about hip widths or so apart. And from here, a very deep knee bend and a long spine. And in this shape, drawing your navel towards your spine. So that feeling of connection we found on our backs, we want to find that here. And then perhaps sending your arms back behind you. So feeling the length of your spine, maybe even that quality still of a little bit of a lift of your heart, that lift of your tailbone, just like we found in our tabletop. And then that drawing in of your navel, maybe even a little drawing in of the front ribs, nice and stable. You might stay here, or you might draw your arms forward. Now in this shape, and you can keep your arms back if that's too much, whichever version you're taking, really feel that you have, as if you had a little yoga block between your thighs, that you were kind of squeezing that and simultaneously pressing your heels away. And then press your heels towards each other. And then press your heels away for a moment. And then press your heels towards each other. I don't know about you, I'm feeling a little shake. Let that happen. And then press your heels down to lift all the way up to standing. And just for a moment, just that last little bit, just from the partial squat, feel that reach of your sits bones, the lumbar curve, take that with you as you come up to standing. And you feel the length that's happening here. Let's do it again. Just that partial squat, you can reach your arms forward, feel the lumbar curve, take it with you. And then at the last moment, let your pubic bone turn up just enough to feel that support of the low belly. And what are you noticing now? Sensing your heartbeat, perhaps. New relationship to gravity, just accommodating that for a moment. Beautiful. From here, invitation to take your feet just a little closer together. It doesn't have to be totally close, but maybe just a little closer for this next one. And an invitation to draw your arms upward and then to open them up towards the side wall and pause on one side. I'm opening to the right. And you might notice that your right hip wants to join. And for our purposes today, re-squaring your hips forward and just feeling that opening, that little twist in the upper body as your hips stay focused forward. And then from here, an invitation to take your right hand towards your right hip and lift your left arm. And just notice how that feels to take a little exalted mountain here. Grounding through your feet, squaring through your hips, a little twist in the upper body, lifting your left arm. And then coming back through center, through mountain pose. And the other side. Opening up, this time I'm opening to the left. And taking a moment to notice if left hip has followed and resisting just enough. Finding some stabilization. Gorgeous. And then placing left hand on your sacrum and lifting through your right arm. And you can gaze down over your left shoulder, or maybe you want to look to the side or up even. Feeling that opening in the right side body. Doesn't have to be too much of a lean back. You get to choose. Beautiful. And back through to center. In this time, invitation through mountain to an exhale, forward fold. Inhaling, finding a halfway lift. And exhaling to plant your hands and step back to a high plank for a moment. And then with bent knees, coming back, pressing hips towards heels, and then rolling forward, high plank, knees can lower, and then lowering all the way to the earth. Our first round here is an invitation for some rolling cobras, and you can choose how much weight in your hands, how much lift of your heart, moving with your breath. Inhale to lift and lower. Exhale. One more in your own timing. And exhale. And then from here, moving into a tabletop. And an invitation to play with a little variation here of pigeon, but it's not going to be our full pigeon, at least not yet. And this one is an invitation to draw your right knee forward. And I'm going to lift my left knee just so you can see that what I'm doing here is I'm not turning my right foot in. I'm keeping my right foot right in line with my right hip. Now, here's where blocks can come in handy, because what we're doing here is really just an intention to explore the lift in the upper body. And you can tuck your left toes or make them long. You might even press into the top of the foot for a moment and lower. You can even walk your blocks a little bit closer and lift up even a little higher. So you'll begin to perhaps notice this in your left hip flexor, right here in the front of your left thigh. But the invitation that I'd like you to explore here is to scissor your legs towards each other. Like even without the blocks, I can stay uplifted because I'm drawing my left knee forward and my right knee back. So it's all scissoring in. And if being this lifted is like, my body's not doing that, you might be down here, right? So feel out what's that edge of the stretch for you. And sometimes you have to lower down enough to find it so that you go, oh, wow, I was way past my edge. And here's my edge. Beautiful. Let's unwind from that. Maybe take a moment to step back into that lumbar curve downward dog. And then from here, sliding your left knee forward. Again, shin is in line, so the foot's not coming across towards the right. And then you can walk yourself back. And then maybe lift up here, or lift up using blocks, or be lowered down using blocks. But we're working on finding that edge as we lift up of where you can sense and feel hip flexor and maybe psoas respond. And you can once again find that scissoring action, right knee drawing forward, left knee drawing back. It might even lift you so much that you don't need the blocks, although I'm going to recommend them regardless. And just finding your relationship to support and stretch, where that edge lives for you on this side. Beautiful. Coming on out. You can come through table, finding that lumbar curve and lift your knees. And a few breaths here, downward facing dog. And then an invitation to begin to walk your feet forward. And we're going to start out with a nice wide stance, even a little wider than your hips, your hands, out towards the edges of the mat. And this time, as we bend the knees, I'll invite you to place your hands on your knees and find that lumbar curve here. And then in this variation of an Utkatasana shape, an invitation to draw your arms forward. And then as if you're grabbing onto something and pulling it towards you, pull that back as your heart comes forward. And you can do that again. Reach, grab, pull, heart comes forward, shine your light. Yes, through every cell in this particular shape, you are probably feeling it. And then see if you can keep that sensation, that warmth that's happening in your low spine, around your low back with you. Keep that curve with you as you press into your feet and come up to standing. Woo! Big transition. So a little shaking, great. Let that happen. Signs of your aliveness. From here, you can walk your feet a little closer if that feels good, and an invitation to draw your arms up overhead. We're going to open to the right, go right into that exalted shape, placing hand to sacrum, lift, through center, through mountain, through side two, and lift, and through center. Inhale to sweep your arms, mountain, and exhale to fold. Inhale, halfway, and exhale, planting your hands, stepping back. And once again, a nice deep knee bend to send your hips back, and then forward, and knees to the earth, heart to the earth. We've arrived. This time, the invitation is to find a variation of locust, which involves drawing your arms back, interlacing hands towards your sacrum. And for the first round, you might choose to keep your legs rooted and grounded. And as we inhale, just lifting through the upper body. And exhale to lower. And maybe for the next two rounds, you might lift upper body and legs off the earth. You can squeeze heels towards each other and then lower. And one more time. And lower. This time, an invitation to press back for just a moment into child's pose. Now, we started out our class today in this shape. And as we revisit this now, what are you noticing? What's changed? What's calling for your attention now? You might even check in with that seed of your intention that you planted earlier. And then the invitation is to come back up through tabletop. And from tabletop, our downward facing dog. You're got the transition now, and an invitation to take your right leg back and forward and through, coming into a variation here of a knee down lunge. And I just grabbed a little pillow for under my left knee because I think that's handy and comfortable. You can choose what you'd like. And a moment here to come in and out of your lunge, and you might use blocks for that. Good. And then from here, maybe walking your hands up onto your front thigh. So that may or may not feel comfortable for you, and you can stay on blocks in some variation, or perhaps coming all the way up to a 90-90 lunge. And then from this shape, it's going to seem a little familiar. We're going to draw the arms up and through mountain. We're going to open to the right. And the invitation is to plant right hand on your sacrum as you begin to lift through your left arm. And you can stay in this 90-90, or you might begin to lean your hips just a little forward as you lift through your heart. Finding that edge, backing away. And then unwind. From here, an invitation to pause for a moment, sending your right foot forward and finding a little stretch of the hamstring on the back of your right leg. So I love blocks for this. And you can feel your way in. And nice thing about blocks is they've got many settings. So you might be way up here, or you might be quite folded forward. Just a few breaths, breathing. And then if it feels right, you might come forward with your hands either on the earth or on a block. And this time, hands are on the inside of your right foot as you turn towards your left thigh, right thigh, inside of right foot, inside of right thigh. And then maybe you're lifting your left foot. Maybe you're reaching around, clasping once again. Oh, half bow. And there's no better, worse, right, wrong. What we are going for is a little hamstring or quadricep stretch here. Again, beneficial for releasing some of that chronic tightness in the hip flexors. And then releasing, letting go, not slingshotting, and stepping back, downward facing dog. A moment here, sensing left and right sides. And then from here, invitation is to lift through your left leg and come forward, low lunge. If you like a little padding underneath your right knee, go for it. And then a few free breaths here, in and out of your lunge, however your body is calling to be attended to through movement or stillness. Lovely. And then from here, maybe you begin to walk your hands up on top of your left thigh. Great place to stay. Maybe you draw your arms up, mountain. Maybe you open up towards the left side. Maybe you exalt. Left hand to sacrum and inhale to lift. And you can back out of the lunge. You can deepen in, finding that edge of sensation and feeling that sacred connection between your hips and your heart. Beautiful. All right, we're going to come back out of this and a moment here for that hamstring stretch. You can slide your left foot forward or your right knee back using your blocks at any height. And then as we rebend into the lunge, now the invitation is to take both feet to the inside of your left foot. And you can stay right here, or maybe you begin to turn towards your left thigh. Maybe right foot lifts and you intend in that direction, or you take hold and kick into your hand. Beautiful. Unwinding from here. Stepping left foot back to meet the right. And that transition, if you are appreciating that today, from the lumbar curve, keeping that as you press back, downward facing dog. Maybe beginning to reach your heels toward the earth. And then once again, a moment to gaze forward and walk your feet forward. Arriving with your feet about hip widths apart, finding a halfway lift, and exhale to fold. And this time, inhale, let's come all the way up to standing. And we're going to set up for a few more variations of Utkatasana, which is a bit of our theme today. So variation one, and you can stay facing forward. I'm just going to turn towards you for a moment. And I'll show this in both directions. Variation one, and you can have your hands at heart center or up above or in front of you, is with feet hips widths apart. We're going to lift the heels and begin to descend. So added challenge, okay? We'll do it together if you're not there with me. From here, maybe hands on hips as you lift your heels, and you don't have to take your heels way off the ground because it adds a balance challenge, and you can always use a wall for support or the top of a chair or couch. And then beginning to bend your knees. Beginning to bend your knees, and you might bring your hands to heart center or keep them at your waist. And then you get to choose. You get to choose how deep of a knee bend you're going for here. Just feeling that quality of lifting heels, bending knees, heart still lifted. Beautiful. Okay. And you can go a little lower if that works. You can lift a little higher. Eventually, we're going to come all the way up to standing, standing on your tippy toes. And then let your heels drop. And you can shake that out for a moment. All right, next variation, hips width for feet. This time, knees together. Any of you who've ever done the hot series or the Bikram series, this is familiar for you. And our hands can be at waist, heart center, forward, whatever supports you. We're going to descend from here. When we descend in that position, knees together, feet wide, there's going to be a point at which you lower, and then your body says, I can't lower unless I lift my heels. So you lift your heels. And then depending on what's happening in your body, you might stop here, you might come lower, might come all the way down. You get to choose. We're not here too long. Squeezing, lifting. As you lift up, there'll be a moment where you can lower your heels again, and then pressing into your feet to come all the way back to standing. Well done. Let it go. All right, absolutely gorgeous. Inhale, let's sweep the arms up. Exhale to fold. Inhale, halfway. And exhale your way to downward facing dog. I will offer up an option to come forward and lower halfway, rolling over the toes, lifting for upward facing dog, and then pressing back. You can, of course, skip that altogether. And then from here, invitation is to lift through right leg, stepping forward and through. Now today, walking your feet so that as you gaze at them, you're not on a balance beam, you're more on railroad tracks, or your feet are hip width apart. And then with hands to hips, lifting up into a crescent lunge. This time, knees off the ground, although you can always modify knee back to the earth. Taking a moment, finding your balance, and inhale, sweeping your arms up. Inhale here. And exhale. Let's open it up to the right. I have a feeling you know where we're going. Placing right hand to sacrum, and inhale to lift the left. And once again, you can choose, you can even bend into your left knee as much as you need. It's your journey here of finding that edge and backing away and exploring. And then we're going to open it all the way up and around into a 5-pointed star. And wiggle it out through your hips. Good. And then turning forward over your right foot. Warrior 2. Inhale, let's reach away. Just a brief transition through these shapes. Exhale, extended side angle, and an invitation to draw your left arm long and forward. Now here, you can roll in, really finding that contraction, and then explore how it feels to send your left hip back and your heart to lift as you expand. And you might find that again. You might curl towards center and then expand from tailbone through heart, through fingertips. One more time. Curling in, expand. And we'll lift up just as a transition to the earth, windmilling down. Right foot back to meet the left. You might roll forward and transition through an upward facing dog, downward facing dog. And we'll find this on the left side. Inhale, left leg, forward and through. Feet nice and wide. Hands to hips. Lifting here. Finding your balance. Sweeping arms. And then opening up to the left side. And maybe finding that exalted shape. Let your light shine. Stunning. One more breath here. And then as you are ready, all the way around, big move into a 5-pointed star, shake it out. And our transition through Warrior 2, just a breath. Inhale away. And exhale, extended side angle, and we pause. Right arm to reach. And then explore how it feels to curl in just a little bit. And then to expand, sending right thigh back, heart lifts, fingertips reach, and contract. Finding your movement with breath. One more. Beautiful. Inhale, lifting through warrior two, just as a transition to the earth. And from downward facing dog, inhale and exhale, lowering knees. And if it feels right, sitting back on your heels. Maybe a moment to check back in. Another shape that we resided in at the beginning of our class time together. And perhaps noticing what has changed. We'll have one more exalted shape, our theme for today, letting our light shine. And this will be a variation of camel, and I will invite this variation with toes tucked under. And I'm going to show two options. First one is that as we lift up, we're going to open towards the right. We're going to plant right hand on sacrum as we lift left arm. And we'll find that same action on side two, but I also want to show the second option. So before we go into it together, let me just demo option two here, which is that you might take hand to heart center, and instead of pausing at sacrum, you take right hand around to right heel and left arm lifts. And find that same action on side two. Okay. You get to choose. Lots of choices here. Inhale from camel. Exhale, right hand either to sacrum or to the heel of your right foot. And then maybe lifting your left hand up. Whichever version you're taking, really squaring your hips forward, opening across diaphragm, belly, heart. And then inhale. And we'll find side two, your variation, sacrum, or lifting right here, hand to heel, fingertips to sky, exalting, shining your light. And when you feel complete, coming back, and for a moment, returning to seated on your heels. Noticing how your breath is responding. And we'll make a transition all the way down onto your back for these final few shapes before we come into final resting. As you come onto your back, you might choose to have bolster nearby, blocks nearby, even a blanket nearby for warmth for your final rest. And arriving on your back, the first invitational shape here is to find a variation of bridge pose. And what I'm going to invite for this is to place your feet hip widths apart, feet facing forward, and then for a moment, really round your tailbone down so that you're arching your spine, that lumbar curve once again away from the earth. And then allowing that to settle just enough, engaging the lower abdominals just enough so that as you press your palms downward, you have a neutral spine. We're not curving the spine to lift it. You're not lifting your tailbone up. You're lifting with a neutral spine or even that slight lumbar curve as you lift into this bridge pose. And you can stay here, or maybe you want to clasp your hands underneath and roll your shoulders under you. Whichever you're choosing, letting your chin and nose be straight up to the ceiling so we're not looking side to side. You can even explore here how it feels to imagine that you have a block between your inner thighs, giving that one more squeeze, a little shake if you notice that there, and then softening and releasing your sacrum back down to the earth. Counter shape here is to walk your feet together and perhaps to open your knees wide. Now, you get to choose your variation once again in this supine butterfly. You might want to place blocks underneath your outer thighs, a little extra support. You might explore how it feels to press feet into each other, slightly lift your knees and lower them. And you might notice that there's a little bit more opening or even a little tremble or shake in your legs. And just let that happen. And you can use your hands to assist closing your legs like a book here, walking your feet out wide to the edges of their mat one more time. And that final stretch, we visited it a few times already, knees to one side and the other. Oh, cat stretch here, dog stretch, your favorite animal stretch. Ah. And as we prepare to come into final Shavasana, maybe a moment here of knees drawn in toward your chest, wrapping hands around your shins, maybe even nose to knees, a final bija on your back, seed pose. Return to your intention if you'd like in your mind. And then as we let this go, planting that intention, that seed in the earth for final Shavasana, resting, and you might place that bolster underneath your knees here for today, because as we're softening through psoas, a nice layer here of extra support, and the bent knees can be that. You might even place that blanket over you to really nourish you as you soften and relax. So you have arrived. We have arrived together at this place where there's nothing to do. You have done enough and you are enough. And in this moment, there is enough support to hold you. Perhaps see if you can sense that support that has your back. In the fabric of this community that holds us. And then one more scan of your body, letting go of any unnecessary tension in your eyes, your jaw, your shoulders, arms, your hands, through your torso and your back and hips, relaxing and releasing through your legs and feet. Letting the breath just move naturally. And I invite you to reside here. I will return to the words that we began with today. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is not our light, or it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God, and your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So grateful. This was a very physical practice. I do encourage you to stay and rest and integrate. For those of you that are ready to, or who are wanting to transition back up to sitting and back into connection time for closing, beginning to find some gentle movements, wiggling fingers and toes, wiggling your way out of that resting shape. And I'll invite you to roll to one side, pause, reside. And when you're ready, pressing up to sitting. One more moment, perhaps, of tuning into your intention. What brought you here? What are you hoping to take away? Letting yourself really receive that now. And if you choose in your own way, extending the benefits of this practice to all beings. Namaste.